Salutations, one and all! So after Volume 7, RWBY ended, a quick little video. The best one was between RWBY and Weiss, and it did absolutely amazingly well, which led to me following up with it with a video on the best one was between RWBY and Penny, and the best one was between RWBY and Oscar. All three of them did amazingly well, and they quickly became my 3 most viewed videos of all time, so just thank you so much to everyone who gave it a watch. And even more so, thank you to everyone who left a comment down below. It was so much fun discussing in the comments why people thought one ship worked, why they thought one didn't, their thoughts, their beliefs, their opinions. It was so much fun. I really loved it. And so I decided to make a quick little video, give my own thoughts and opinions on RWBY's 4 main ships. RWBY and Weiss, RWBY and Penny, RWBY and Jaune, RWBY and Oscar. Though before I get started, I want to make one thing clear. I use the word ship a little differently than most people. When I say I ship 2 characters, it means I think they're good for each other. It means I think they help each other grow and improve, become better versions of themselves. It doesn't mean that I think the characters need to end up together or the show will be ruined. It doesn't even mean that I think the characters should end up together. Personally, I have no problem imagining this series ending with RWBY being single. You know, after the series ends, we have a brief epilogue. Weiss running the SEC with Will and Whitley. Blake running the new White Fang. Yang teaching hand-to-hand combat beacon. I really actually want to see that. And finally, we flash over RWBY, still in the field, still fighting the good fights, still being the huntress that she was always meant to be. In the distance, you see a village being attacked by Grimm, and thus kindly she scatters the petals and goes to save the day. Goes to be a huntress as she was always meant to be. I would have absolutely no problem with that series ending like that. I think that'd be really cool. But let's get into this. Based on the view count of my videos and the massive amount of fan I've seen around it, I'm going to say Whiterose is probably the most popular, so I'm going to start off with them. Now, what have Weiss and RWBY given each other? That's not all that hard to figure out if you look back to Volume 1, who RWBY and Weiss were when they first met. Weiss, the arrogant princess who had to make sure everything was absolutely 100% perfect. Seriously, she spent a good 20 seconds getting her footing right in her first battle against the Grimm.
Remember your training, Weiss. Head up, shoulders back, right foot forward. Not that forward. Slow your breathing, wait for the right time to strike, and...
She was surrounded by monsters who were about to rip her limb from limb, and she had to make absolutely certain her footing was perfect before she could fight them. Oh, it's amazing she didn't die right then and there. But because of RWBY, she learned to improvise, think on her feet, to no longer be so obsessed with perfection. And it was only because of these changes that RWBY brought about that she was able to eventually stand up to her father.
So these are the little friends you threw everything away for?
Not friends. Family.
To no longer be a slave to her family name, to think of herself as Weiss first and a Schnee second. As for what Weiss gave RWBY, well, let's not forget that RWBY was kind of insane the first volume. She hopped right on Nevermore because she thought it might help them find the relic faster.
Well, why don't we just jump? What are you, insane?
RWBY, that's not the kind of thing you do if you're thinking more than 2 seconds ahead of time. But because of Weiss, she's become an incredibly skilled strategist, easily leading her team through complex maneuvers and strategies. RWBY was also shown to be pushing herself harder than ever before to train and to study, to prove to Weiss that she really was meant to lead his team, to prove to Weiss that she was worthy of the role of leader. Now, as for what I think has happened with them moving forward, well, Weiss and RWBY have both had a very traumatic volume. You know, Weiss arrested her father, confronted her alcoholic mother, basically went to war with her sister, and is now even more hated by her brother, plus she probably bankrupted her entire family. So yeah, she has a lot she needs to talk about, and RWBY just had a whole, mini mental breakdown when her mother was mentioned, which I feel like deserves a conversation. I really, really do. I mean, I heard a lot of people complain about how Weiss didn't move, she didn't act when RWBY was having a whole mental breakdown. But to me, it was always that Weiss was just in shock, that she literally couldn't fathom her leader, her happy-go-lucky, the person who's always smiling and standing by her side, breaking down like that, crying like that. And it's always been my opinion that RWBY's never properly grieved the losses that she's had in her life. Yang once said that RWBY was too young to understand what it meant when Summer died, but I always viewed it as more that she refused to let herself show sadness, show grief, because she didn't want to upset her family, didn't want to make them sadder than they already were, so she put on a fake smile, she pretended everything was okay to try and cheer them up, try and be happy around them. And after the loss of Penny and Pierre, I feel like she did the same thing. She suppressed those emotions, she suppressed that grief so that she can keep pushing forward, so that she can keep being the leader that her team needs, being the happy-go-lucky person that her family needs. And I think this is a really great chance for RWBY to finally embrace that grief, finally let herself cry for the losses she's experienced in her life. I'm sure Penny came back, but she still, witnessed her being literally torn to shreds in front of her. That takes a toll on a person. See, that's a big hope for Whiterose and Volume 8 of RWBY. I really just want them to talk, to express everything they've gone through, to express their grief, and maybe have some tears, maybe have some hugs. I'm not sure if I really see them as being endgame. I think, next volume will decide it, though. If they do at that moment, if they do open up to each other, then I think it could be possible. If not, I'm going to say it's just really not likely to happen, because we really haven't gotten all that much Whiterose in a while. Volume 7, a few moments between them, but not like we used to have. So, yeah, I'm definitely calling it. Next volume is going to make or break Whiterose. Alright, so moving on, let's talk about RWBY and Penny. Now, as for what these two gave each other, again, not that much of a surprise. RWBY was the first person who knew Penny's secret and viewed her as a human being, viewed her as a real live person, viewed her as a friend. That meant so very, very much to Penny, and it's something, she's still struggling with. Ironwood definitely views her as a weapon, a tool, a machine, more than anything else. He made that abundantly clear this volume. Winter, I'd say, definitely views her as more human than Ironwood does. They had some really great moments this last volume. I really like that between them. But the rest of Mantle very quickly went from viewing her as Mantle's protector to Ironwood's crazy killer robot. Oh, that's gotta take a toll on the person. But RWBY, throughout everything, has always viewed her as human, always viewed her as her friend, and in a way that made Penny human. As for what Penny gave to RWBY, well, RWBY's definitely been a lot less cheerful lately. Ever since the fall of Beacon, and especially since learning that Salem was immortal, she hasn't smiled as much. She hasn't been as cheerful. She hasn't been as happy as she used to be. It's almost like you can see the weight of the world on her shoulders. And at no point is it more clear than the party celebrating them getting their Huntress license. I mean, this is literally what RWBY has been working towards her entire life. And yet she's sitting on the sidelines with Crow, looking more sad than happy. Penny gave her the chance to be a teenage girl again, to smile, to joke around, to be happy, to forget for a few moments that every decision you make could bring the world ever closer to its inevitable destruction. And RWBY really needed that. I complained quite a bit about Penny's return. I thought it took what could have been a tear-jerking, great emotional moment and just played it off for laughs. But what RWBY needed right then was laughs. She needed a happiness. She needed to have her friend back. That's what she needed in order to get her light back, to regain her humanity. And I just really love how RWBY managed to do that, to make the show cheerful again thanks to Penny. Now, as what I expect from moving forward, probably same thing as with Weiss. I mean, Penny, just witnessed a person dying. I feel like that's definitely going to take a toll on her. Plus, she seemed a little in denial about her own death, so that's probably something she still needs to talk about. I could certainly see Penny joining RWBY and Weiss for their talk about all they've been through, all they've gone through. A real chance to open up for all three of them. I think it'd be amazing. My concern is that after Penny witnessed someone sacrificing themselves for the sake of their duty, she's going to do the same thing and sacrifice herself to take out Salem, Cinder, the giant flying whale, one of them. Though I did hear an interesting theory in the comments of my RWBY and Penny video, which is basically, if Penny dies again, could RWBY use a fragment of her soul to bring her back? I can't think of a better analogy for marriage than two people literally sharing a soul. Plus then maybe Penny will have silver eyes, which I would absolutely love to see. Not sure if these two could be endgame. I think it'd certainly be hilarious given that RWBY's first ship was, with Crescent Rose. And she ends up dating a literal machine. That'd be really funny. I'd love to see that. Right now, I just love them as friends, and I think, they really bring some light and levity to this show that we have not seen in a long time. Alright, next up, Jaune and RWBY. This is the only ship on this list I haven't actually made a video of yet, just because they didn't really have that many moments in Volume 7. I might end up making one down the road. If so, I'd have to go back to Volume 3 or 4, probably. Which I might end up doing down the road. I mean, it's definitely an interesting ship. Jaune was really the first friend RWBY made at Beacon.
Hey. I'm Jaune.
RWBY.
When all hope seemed lost and she was literally lying on the ground in a pile of depression, Jaune gave her a hand. He helped her back on her feet. And later on, RWBY returned the favor when Jaune was all depressed because he was being blackmailed, because he felt like he was a failure as a leader. RWBY told him that he couldn't be a failure anymore because he was a leader. Because of that, he had to stand up and become a better version of himself. RWBY literally made Jaune a better version of himself just by telling him that he had to be for the sake of his team. Oh, I love that. Though they haven't had too many really impactful moments since then. I mean, they had the hug in Volume 6, that was something. Not sure. Though I think next volume could really capitalize on what they have in common. They're both leaders, both in charge of their team, protecting them, leading them, guiding them, and Jaune could certainly use some advice right here, given that his team has essentially fallen apart. I mean, Ren and Nora, that's definitely going to be a big plot line next volume, given how much it was built up this volume. And I think RWBY could really give some helpful advice here. I mean, for one thing, Blake and Yang are dating. I'd definitely love to hear RWBY's thoughts and opinions on them being a couple. We haven't really seen RWBY acknowledge Bumblebee as being canon yet. I'm very curious about that, what her thoughts are, what her opinions are. And even beyond that, though, we could also have RWBY talking about her parents' team, because don't forget, her father dated Summer and Raven, and possibly Crow as well, who knows at this point. I'm sure she's heard some stories about the crazy team dynamics that went along with that. I'm sure that, she gives some good advice to Jaune. That'd be a chance for her to, talk about her family, give some more insight into what they were like, bond with Jaune, help him with his problem, and talk about Bumblebee all at the same time. That'd be an absolutely amazing scene. I'd absolutely love to see that. Do I think these two are going to be endgame? I'm going to say probably not, at least not right now. I feel like Jaune still hasn't gotten over Pyrrha. I've heard a lot of people say, oh, that was 3 years ago, we should be over it by now. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. He did get a good deal of closure in Volume 6 when he talked to Pyrrha's sister, mother, aunt, ghost, no idea. But I still don't think he's over. I still don't think, he's really dealt with the guilt that he's felt over not being able to protect her. Especially since, oh god, this is depressing. But if he had unlocked his semblance earlier, if he had gone with her into the battle against Cinder, being able to enhance Pyrrha's semblance, oh, she probably wouldn't have died. She probably would have beaten Cinder. Or at least she would have, held on long enough for RWBY to get there and give them back if they needed to take her out. Wow, that's a depressing thought. That's a really, really depressing thought. But yeah, I definitely think Jaune needs to get a little more closure before that ship can sail. I don't know, maybe once he cuts off Cinder's head, he'll feel better. You never know. Alright, finally, let's talk about RWBY and Oscar. Now, this is the ship that I did not see coming whatsoever. I mean, when I had that moment in Volume 7, this thing.
You first.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Actually.
I just wanted
had the
to
thought
say
that maybe we should tell Ironwood.
Oh, well.
I was utterly flabbergasted. I did not see this coming at all. But then someone requested I do a video on the best one between RWBY and Oscar. I'm like, alright, I guess. So I went back and watched from the very beginning, from when Oscar first joined the team. And yeah, I feel like kind of an idiot, because it's probably the most heavily implied ship in the entire series. I mean, Oscar, he is always looking towards RWBY, sometimes to a creepy level.
Sorry.
As if asking for her for advice, for feedback, to know what to do in the situation. That shows that he already has a huge amount of trust and faith in her from the very beginning. And this goes the other way as well, because RWBY opened up to Oscar about the loss of Pyrrha, the loss of Penny, what that did to her, how it pushed her to become a better huntress, because that's what they would have done.
I'd be lying if I said that it didn't hurt. That I didn't think about them every day since I lost them. That I didn't wish I had spent more time with them. I know they would have kept fighting too. No matter how dangerous it was.
We've never seen her talk about what these losses did to her, how they impacted her with anyone else, with her family, with her friends, with her team, no one. I mean, you could certainly make the argument that she isn't talking about it with them because it's a loss they've suffered as well, and she doesn't want to bring it up because she doesn't want to make them sadder. That goes back to what I was saying during the RWBY and Weiss part of the video. And she doesn't want to make people sad, so she just pretends everything's okay, and she doesn't have to do that with Oscar because he didn't know those people, he didn't experience the same loss that they did. But still, this is a moment of openness and vulnerability that is very rare for RWBY to show, and I really love that. She was also always saving Oscar's butt. Not just from the grin, but also, when he's confronted by Ironwood, who is literally prostrating himself before him, RWBY comes in and saves the day, protects him from having to explain why Ozpin isn't there anymore. And my hope for them in Volume 8 is Oscar finds a way to grow, to improve, to become stronger. At the very last minute, as Salem, Cinder, Ironwood, Ren, whoever it is, goes in to kill RWBY, Oscar steps up and manages to save her, possibly by unlocking his semblance, which I'm going to speculate right here is going to involve manipulating time in some way, being able to accelerate himself, which would lead to some really cool combo attacks with RWBY, or being able to accelerate others, him boosting RWBY's speed to make her go even faster. Speaking of combos, we could have Jaune boosting Oscar's semblance as he boosts RWBY's semblance, which would probably make her move at the speed of light. I'd absolutely love to see that. Though we could also have him do what Jin did at the end of Volume 6, slowing things down so that RWBY has a chance to breathe, to focus, so that she can unleash her silver eyes. We saw in Volume 7, she still can't, do it in the middle of battle when everything's crazy and hectic. So being able to team with Oscar to use it even in the middle of a hectic battle would definitely be an amazing power-up for her. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room, because there are two fairly big issues that the community seems to have with RWBY and Oscar ending up together. First off, there's the age difference, which, that was definitely a concern for me, because I thought Oscar was 12. I really did. In my reaction video, I'm pretty sure I actually say, isn't he like 12? He was 14 at the end of Volume 6. Volume 7 took place over several weeks, several months. Maybe he's 15 now. So 14 and RWBY's 17. That is a bit of an age difference, but don't forget, when RWBY first started, she was 15, and everyone else in Beacon Academy was at least 17, and no one had any problem shipping them together then, so not that weird. The second issue is definitely a bigger problem, and that's the fact that Oscar is possessed by RWBY's former headmaster. There's a whole lot wrong with that, especially since I theorize that Ozpin is actually RWBY's grandfather, great-grandfather, something in there. I mean, he's always definitely seemed more gently grandfatherly to RWBY, and it's been confirmed that the Silver Eyes are a remnant of the God of Light's powers, and Oz is the only person who has any contact with the God of Light. And besides Salem, that's a whole other crazy theory. Plus, during Oz's flashback, it did look like one of his kids had silver eyes. So yeah, RWBY and Oscar definitely can't work as long as Oscar is possessed by Ozpin. But I don't think that's going to be an issue for the rest of his life. I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, this ship can't work because eventually they're going to fuse, they'll become one. I don't think that's the case. Because I think we can all agree the series can't end without Salem being defeated, without her, I don't know, either sent into space, finally killed, sealed away, something, which finally puts an end to her. And that's, the end of Oz's mission. The whole reason he's been reincarnating all this time again and again is to stop Salem. So if she's gone, then his mission's over, and he can, move on. He can finally die, essentially. And once that happens, Oscar's just going to go back to being a regular old former farm boy turned huntsman with probably some magical powers left over. At which point he'll be completely free to date RWBY. Though I do think it'd be really funny if they go in for a kiss before then and Oz interrupts them. Oh, that'd be hilarious. Quite frankly, I do think they're the two most likely to end up together, but I could definitely be wrong with that. But please, let me think all of this down below, what your opinions on these 4 ships, and what other ships would you like to hear me talk about? If any one ship gets a lot of attention in the comments down below, I will definitely return to do a follow-up video about it. I'd certainly love to rant for a good couple minutes about why I think RWBY belongs with Blake. They both love books! And heck, even if it's RWBY and Cinder, I think that's called Fallen Petal, I'm sure I could vamp for a good 8 minutes about why I think they belong together. Oh, please don't make me do that, internet. So yeah, like and subscribe so you don't miss the next video. Please, I'm really close to 1,000 subscribers. It's been one of my main goals ever since I first started this channel. I would really love to hit it before the end of the year. But until then, peace!